just double checking. So my first question is, how have you been?
I've been great. So far, so good this year. Lots of creative outlets, lots of good things happening. So it's been good so far. How about you?
I'm good, and thank you for asking. I always I'm happy when the guests ask how I'm doing because most don't. But I've been good, genuinely. If you asked me last December, I would have said I'm okay. I'm living check to check. But now, I have a new job since January, and money plays a very, very large role in mental health.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah,
I,
well, so last year I wasn't doing so well, but this year I'm doing much better, and it sounds like you've been good. So I did write down the three questions, the three things that you wanted to talk about. The first one was, why do people feel so disconnected from their lives? What are your thoughts on that?
well, I honestly think a lot of people don't realize that they're disconnected in their lives. It shows up as, anxiety, burnout,
Mhm.
restlessness, numbness, and people kind of mistaken those signs for what it is versus disconnection. But I think a lot of people are disconnected because society makes us, it's raising us a certain way, essentially.
Yeah.
There's a lot of expectations. So while externally everyone's achieving, lots of good things, internally, it having been raised that way is causing the disconnection because you're not being your authentic, more aligned self, so to speak. You're doing what society has raised you to be. So,
So how do you think society raises people to be?
oh gosh. So it depends. So culturally, that's a big difference, right? Like just speaking from my culture alone, there's a ton of expectations put on you. Like I know growing up, it's funny, but growing up, I literally my choices were doctor, engineer, pharmacist. That's it, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the good career. It's the expectation that you're going to succeed in life. It's the expectation you should make X amount of money. You should achieve these goals, and there's the bar set very high. So when you think about it, just even from that one cultural standpoint, then it's like, oh, okay, I'm always constantly chasing these things, but that might not be who I am, And so I feel like that disconnect happens there. And
It sounds to me like maybe your parents or some people put pressure on you to make a lot of money when you grow up. Is that am
oh,
I right?
for
Yeah.
sure, because that's, in terms of my culture, that was what determined success was how much you made. So yeah, it,
I'm
it
sorry,
kind of
what
went
what is
hand
your
in hand.
culture?
So I am Indian, Asian
Okay.
Indian.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have I know there's a stereotype with Asian parents, and it's very real.
Yeah, I'm Filipino. Filipinos I feel like are a lot more family oriented. I mean, some Filipinos are very like money hungry, and I'm a little bit money hungry myself. But like, I don't remember growing up my parents putting like much pressure on me to be a doctor or a lawyer. I do know it's very common with Chinese and Indian. It
Yeah,
sounds like as well.
very much so. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then just even outside of my culture, speaking even in general terms, like American society, right? Like
Mhm.
what does success look like? It's when you have a good career, you have a good house, you have all these, like you must go to college, you got to get a degree, that kind of thing. And those expectations are kind of similar, but,
Mhm.
kind of puts that disconnect there too, because not everyone, like while you might be raised to achieve that, not everyone feels it inside. So.
Yeah, this is one thing I think about a lot. Like basically the balance between like money and enjoying what you do, because it's so easy to say do what you like. It's right. It's so easy to say do what you like, do what you
Mhm.
enjoy. But in reality, we have bills to pay and times are hard. And I live in New York, which is very expensive. I think you're in Florida. Uh,
South Carolina.
I'm sorry, South Carolina,
Mhm.
and like I mean, I heard that the cost of living down there is lower, but still, I would still imagine that it's still not so easy. So like it's so ridiculous the way that like I think it's like 75% of people are living check to check, and like what do you have to say to, like, let's just say a young person listening about like uh, you know the contradicting idea of doing what you enjoy and also making good enough money to pay the bills. What do you have to say to that young person?
I would say find alignment. because I think that's the key. So in Vedic terminology, there's a concept called dharma or dharma. It's pronounced either way,
Mm.
but the concept is basically your purpose, but how that purpose relates to society, right? And when you find that, when you find your purpose, your reason, I feel like the money comes. But like first,
Interesting.
that alignment should be there, right? Like when you when your actions, values, and inner experience all line up on the same plane of existence, I feel like certain opportunities and things cross your path that just fall in your lap, so to speak. And in turn, I feel like you'll figure out a way how to make money off of that. Sometimes it just comes to you because you're so naturally aligned to what you should be doing.
And it could take a long time. So for the people listening,
Very.
I've mentioned this once or twice in my podcast, but for the people listening, I decided to pursue therapy, to be a therapist at 35 years old, which was last
Mhm.
year. So it could take a long time. When I was 17, 18, I thought I wanted to be a phys ed teacher, and they make okay money. It was really just because I was lazy, to be honest. But so it takes a long time. It could take a long time. Some people know what they want when they're 5, 6. I have a friend who's a doctor, a cardiovascular doctor. And I asked him, at what age did you know that you wanted to be a doctor? He said 5. So some people are
Wow.
lucky, some people find out later, and that's okay. That's just your path. You mentioned Dharma. So do you know who Dr. K is?
I don't think I'm familiar,
So
but I'm
you
also
would
terrible with names.
no, it's okay. You would love Dr. K. So Dr. K is a
Okay.
psychiatrist on YouTube with like 3 million subscribers. He's getting
Hmm.
bigger. He's from India. He's Hindu, and he talks a lot about karma and dharma and
Hmm.
Hindu concepts. But you would love him. I'm definitely
Oh,
gonna
I
send
would.
send him. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
But
gonna have to look them up.
Definitely, he's that, and I also bring him up because he's actually the one that inspired me to be a therapist. And I'm not Hindu, but I really really respect the Hindu cult. I don't know if you're Hindu or not, but I
I
really
am.
respect you. Okay, great. So I really respect like the belief system. I feel like the Hindu religion and culture is really good at figuring out how to just cultivate inner peace. I feel like.
Mhm. Yes, definitely so. It's in a lot of our ancient text and writing. They figured out a lot with the mind, the body,
Yeah.
how to live like in the present
Mhm.
moment, how to activate oneself internally. And I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I really like it's so interesting because I feel like Hindus, and he talks a lot about Buddhists as well.
Mhm.
Buddhism a little bit, and he's I feel like Western science has a lot of answers, but there's also a lot of answers in Eastern culture that Western science does not answer. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 1000%. I'm a big science nerd, and so I
Mhm.
follow a lot of like scientific journals and articles. And it always makes me laugh when it's like, oh, well, physics discovered this today. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that was in our ancient text
Yeah, yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah. The East
So
figured out a lot of things a very, very long time
very
ago that
early.
it took the West a long time to figure out. So
Yeah.
another great example is meditation, right? The East figured out a very, very long time ago that meditation is effective, very effective, and can change your life. And actually, like 50, 60 years ago, the West used to laugh at
Mhm.
meditation, and they used to say like there's no scientific evidence behind that. Now the
Right.
West isn't laughing so much, like a lot of people meditate nowadays.
Exactly. And it's so good for you.
Yeah. I do you. I'm assuming you meditate.
I
Yeah.
do. I do.
Let's talk about that. How has that
Sure.
changed your life?
Oh my gosh, how is it not? It literally I feel like our lives are so busy. I don't, mine is at least, and I know a lot of
Yeah.
ours are. And for me, meditation has brought me to stillness, and I think stillness is very, very important and very lacking with most people that I know. And it allowed me to have that inner awareness. It when you really sit with yourself, a lot of answers come forward that you
Yeah.
didn't realize you had questions about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it helps me organize thoughts really well. There's a lot that goes on in your subconscious mind, and meditation kind of helps to make sense of that jumble for me. And I feel like your subconscious is so important because those are all the signals that you're getting, all the
Mhm.
vibrations and frequencies that you're getting, and they get jumbled into your subconscious, which is kind of why our dreams are a little wonky at times.
Yeah, yeah.
But meditation helps me to make sense of that. And it also helps me to connect with my deeper purpose. It helps to kind of bring clarity to it a little
Mhm.
bit.
Mhm.
So yeah, oh, it's so many benefits. Not to mention, like, just breathing in general is so good for you.
Yes, and I would love for you one day. It doesn't have to be today to teach me some meditation techniques because
Sure.
I've meditated a few times, but I'm definitely still learning. And I
Hmm.
heard that I know so many people who including my brother who said that it changed their lives. You did mention dreams. I just recently learned that dreams are the point of dreams very often is to process emotions that we haven't
Hmm.
processed throughout the day, right? A lot of people, we're so busy working and we're so busy like doing a million things, like you said, that a lot of people don't process a lot of thoughts and emotions throughout the day. And dreams are really good at like helping
Hmm.
us process emotions. One
Right.
thing I do a lot is I use ChatGPT to interpret my dreams, and it's really good, by the way, for anyone
Yeah,
listening, and maybe for you even.
I'm gonna have to
ChatGPT,
try.
it's really, really, really amazing in 2 seconds at like interpreting dreams. Also, you did mention sitting still. So
Mhm.
Dr. K mentions this technique with this, which I brought up in my last podcast, and it sounds crazy, but it's staring at a wall for 30 minutes.
Mhm.
The point of this is there's a few points. One point is to increase our tolerance towards boredom. I feel like a lot of people have a very low tolerance towards boredom, and that plays a very large role in happiness because when people have a low tolerance for boredom, they end up doing a lot of stupid things to
Right.
fix and to cope with the boredom, like drinking, like smoking.
Mhm.
So staring at a wall for 30 minutes can increase boredom, and it can increase our tolerance for boredom, and it can also help us, like you said, process emotions, and a lot of thoughts will pop up that didn't pop up throughout the day, right?
Mhm. Exactly. That's right. It's really interesting when you think of it in terms of dreams. I know I've had wild ones, and it's really it does help you navigate that.
Yeah, that's how it helps us navigate our own subconscious. So I have an interesting question that you made me think of when you mentioned like work and people moving around,
Mhm.
and it's a question that I think about a lot. Do you think that people work too hard?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Mm,
Way more than necessary, way more than
mm,
they should.
mm,
But it's also like it's the result of the world that we live in, right?
mm,
And then we get fed this whole idea of the harder you work, the better or more of a better person that you are, the more
mm.
successful you are. And these are should be goals in life. And really, I feel like those are it's the wrong goals. We're looking at the wrong thing. Those shouldn't be our goals in life. And working, I feel like takes away from creativity so much. And
Mm,
we have like that creative spark that is within humans. That is the divine. That is what we should be connecting with,
mm.
not working hard just to work hard, you know?
So what do you have to say to people who want to get rich?
Oh gosh. Not my forte really, but I would say again, I would say find your alignment,
Mm,
find your purpose, find your dharma, because that will lead you to success, to abundance in many ways. Abundance, connection with your life, abundance in home, abundance in family and friends, abundance in knowing that your purpose is serving others, abundance in money because that comes naturally at that point. So, yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's it's interesting because it sounds to me like you are much more focused on what the soul needs than
Mhm.
what money can buy.
1000%.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So the second thing you wanted to talk about was hitting cost of alignment. This is super
Ah.
interesting. I'm not going to say too much because I want to let you talk, but I do think it's really important to understand that there are pros and cons to everything, right? So
Right.
so tell us, what do you think are some hitting costs of alignment?
Well, there's a lot more than I think people expect.
Mm,
I feel like social media has turned alignment into branding almost. It has kind of turned this term of alignment into like a trend, almost like a self-care trend, and it's really not. Alignment is like your inner truth, and branding is always like an external perception. And so social media has always been like, well, alignment will bring you all of these great things and wonderful things, and it's true, it will, but it really belittles the cost factor.
Mm,
And when people start trying to align their lives, that's when they realize the costs. And the costs are grieving an old identity. Sometimes you lose relationships
yeah.
and the loss of belonging. And that's very, very strong in human nature. We are wired to belong, right? And so sometimes when you're going through that alignment, you'll lose people or relationships that saw you as a certain version of yourself, and they don't want you to change, and sometimes you lose that relationship. um, and once that happens, people stop. People will rather live in misalignment than pay the cost of not belonging. Like, they get stuck. And then the other thing is you're also grieving your old identity, right?
Hmm.
You're grieving your old coping mechanisms, old adaptations that you learned to survive, your old habits, old thoughts. You're grieving that old identity before you step into that new aligned version of yourself. And then there's also friendships, family, grieving old selves. But the thing is, if you can get past it, then a better version of you does come around, and you do get a different tribe, a different circle. You just have to kind of get past that cost of it. If you can grieve that and move forward and not live in misalignment, then then you can achieve that new circle. And then that belonging comes back way stronger, way better, way, like more designed for your new life.
It sounds to me like you let go of some people in your life.
Oh, yeah, they've not naturally fallen away though,
Mhm.
and I think the key is to grieve the loss and know about the cost of it, but not to let it hold you back.
What caused you to let them go?
Oh, it was just a different, like at that point when I had aligned myself to be a certain way.
Hmm.
I had an old friendship, for example, very, very good friends for a very long time, like 18 years of a friendship. Um, and granted, we're still friends, just not as close, right?
Okay.
But what happens is whenever I did align myself to be a certain way, what is my truth? That person's goals and thoughts, and they differed. And so they kind of just naturally fell away. And I knew that, and that's okay because I know that that's what happens. So I
Hmm.
did not go and chase that. I did not go and say, wait, 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 I want this and I want this, because they're contradictory. They cannot exist on the same plane. So I knew I had to, I could literally see it in real time happening. So, but I had to let it go. That's part of the cost too. And as I let it go, I've stepped more and more into, the version of myself that I want to be, that aligns with, my inner experience and my actions, my values, where I can see myself headed. And had I not done that, it would have stopped me from getting there, out of the name of friendship, out of the name of misalignment.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, in life, we go through so many different phases, right?
Right.
Like I said, at one point I wanted to be a phys ed teacher. I used to be a lot more quiet. I used to be, when I was like 20, 21, 22, I didn't, I I would say I severely undervalued money. Like I didn't think anything of it. And I still have the same friends since then. But same friends since middle
Sure.
school. So that's the good news. But there were some people I had to drop off, and it's so interesting because we go through so many different phases, and every time that you enter a new phase, you have to let something go. You have to let
Exactly.
your old identity go. You have to let maybe a friend go, maybe a girlfriend, boyfriend go.
Right.
And it does require a lot of sacrifice. Your third point you touched upon, which is outgrowing old identities. Is there anything else you want to say about that third topic?
Um, I feel like yes, actually, and let me put my thoughts together if you don't mind, because I feel
Yeah.
like it's really important. I think where we are now is we live in a world that has caused us to have a lot of fractured identities. So we have a work version of ourselves, we have a family identity version of ourselves, we have how we are with friends, how we are, where we want to be, our aspirational identity. We have all of these fractured identities.
Mhm.
And what has happened is instead of living in one true identity, people are now managing identities. And that's not a life fully lived when you're just managing different versions of yourself instead of living in your true one identity. And then if you outgrow that, sure. But being whole, I think, is what's missing in our society. And that's anytime you outgrow an identity, like I still want to like make sure that it gets across that it's like you're still in one whole identity version of yourself when you're moving forward. You're not living in this, you're taking all your fractured pieces and you're becoming whole in your new version.
This is an interesting topic. You did lose me a little bit. So
Sorry.
yeah, help me understand because you I got a little bit lost. Could you like put it in more simple terms for me?
I will try.
Sorry.
No, this is where my brain goes. It's always thinking of like 25
No, I
different
think
things
it's
at
me. I
once.
wasn't able to keep
Um,
up with the analogies.
you're good. So basically, the way that we live,
Uh-huh.
the way most people live, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
As a direct result of how our society is.
Hmm.
We have very fractured identities of ourselves.
What
We
does
have
that mean, fractured identities? What does that mean?
so you have fractured identities are identities that you almost like think of it like clothes, like you're putting on an outfit. Like how you would wear a certain outfit to go to a date night, or you'd wear a certain outfit to go to work.
Different
People
sides
are
of us.
yes, and
Okay.
people
Okay.
are
Okay.
literally managing identities instead of living in it.
Okay.
They're acting that it's a performance.
Okay.
They're not actually living in that identity. When you have your true aligned identity, it works in all aspects of life. You don't need a different version of you for different parts of your life. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it sounds like, because now it's more clear because it is true that we're constantly kind of like a chameleon in the sense
Yeah,
that we change depending on the people around, depending on the
right.
circumstance, depending on, what we're doing. And so do you think do you think that's a bad thing that we're constantly changing?
I don't think we change at a deeper internal level though when we're doing that.
Hmm. Hmm.
That is more to make others comfortable
Hmm.
versus to
Or to
connect
make them
better
like
with
us.
people or to make them like us. Sure.
Hmm.
A lot of that's a very superficial level. It's not, you're not changing your entire personality, hopefully, as long as you're not doing that
Hmm.
for somebody else. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? That's a much deeper level. Because we have different layers that we work through. We have our nervous system layer. You have your perception and meaning making layer. You have your belief systems layer, and then you have your behaviors and your habits. So as long as you're not changing like a core layer, then I feel like it's more you're just being accommodating.
Hmm.
And that's okay to make people feel comfortable, right? So, and that's to each his own. I'm that kind of person where if I were to go into a group setting, I would want people to feel comfortable.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not changing myself at a deeper level to do that.
Yeah, very interesting. So, I can tell that through your life, you've been through multiple phases, and
Yes.
I would love to know like what the, let's say, 20-year-old you was like versus the you now.
Very different. I have gone through quite a few identity, grieving
Crisis.
grievances. Now, I'll give you a great example. And I'll kind of tie in the example of why we need to grow,
Sure,
why we
sure.
need to have a new version of ourselves when we've outgrown an old
Mm.
version.
It
And
reminds
I'll
me
give
of a
you
snake shedding skin.
exactly. It kind of is,
Yeah.
you know, once it gets too tight and you're uncomfortable and managing an identity becomes draining,
Mm.
that's when you know it's time to shed that identity,
Interesting. This
right.
is an
And
interesting
then,
topic. Very interesting topic.
yeah. So I'll give you an example. When I was a kid and I looked very different, I live in South Carolina.
Mm.
So I went to a school where I was the only one that looked like me. And so being a child of an immigrant family also, I felt like I had two identities. I had the one that was at home, which was more Indian, and then I had the one that went to school, which was more American.
Very
And as a
interesting.
kid,
Were you the only Indian in the school?
I have a little brother. He was the only other Indian in the
That must be
school.
tough. That must be tough.
Everybody else was, black or white. So,
Yeah, that must be
yeah.
tough.
So and then when you're a child, you're kind of like, you want to fit in, you want to have friends,
Yeah,
you want to be a part of that
of course,
collective.
yeah, of course.
So I had this identity there. And what happened, because I look back on it a lot through meditation.
Hmm.
And what happened was I started realizing that one identity started almost eating up the other one.
Interesting.
So, yeah, so as this one grew, as me trying to be as American as I could, was starting to make my other identity of being Indian at home feel shameful.
Mm,
And it started eating that identity.
mm,
And this is why I think that fractured identity piece is such a big deal too, because you can't live in contradiction.
mm.
And so I noticed eventually, obviously, I outgrew that identity. I needed to. Could you imagine bringing that into adulthood? You have to, and that's kind of my example of why we grow and why we should shed certain identities. And that's one version. Me at 20 was there's a lot of work to be done when I was
I'd
20.
love to talk about it if you're
Oh
comfortable.
gosh, sure. 20 was interesting because there was a lot of ego involved at
Mm.
20. You at 20, you feel like you
A
can
hum car?
take on the world and win, you
A
know?
hum car?
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of ego involved that identity, that version of myself was fearless. So, so, so fearless when it came to certain things. Like when it came to attacking life, to be living my fullest self, in that sense, fearless. But on the other hand, it's so interesting because that identity was also a people pleaser. That
Mm.
identity was always also, someone that never put themselves first. And
Mhm.
it always shrunk to still kind of fit into those crowds essentially. And so even at 20, I was still working on that kid identity that, said, hey, like you should be more like this. And so eventually, thankfully, I shed out of that too. But 20s was wild. Like when I said I was fearless, I really went full throttle to the world.
Were you like a
And
party animal?
sometimes yeah, but sometimes in a bad way.
Did you
So
did you learn from your it sounds like you suffered some consequences.
not consequences in this sense of like anything physical or, like never broken a bone in my body kind of thing, but consequences in this sense that you start to realize you're losing a piece of yourself.
Mhm.
And that's a very, very strong, very bad consequence for me. Like, I always want to feel whole. I always want to feel connected with myself. Like, I have a very strong intuition, and I always want to feel connected and at whole and at peace with myself. And I sacrificed that in my 20s to be this other identity, something I thought was cool.
Yeah, I think I'm noticing a large sense for a need for external validation when you're
Yes.
younger, and I
Hmm.
think that I this is an extremely important topic because I feel like everyone to a certain extent wants and needs external validation, especially when we're younger. I
Hmm.
do feel like the older I get, the less I need it, the less I want it. But I do
1000.
know people even older than me who just absolutely need it. Um,
Right.
and I hate to say, but this is actually one of the 10 traits of narcissism:
Mhm.
a need for external validation. So definitely one of my favorite topics, which I'd love to delve into for a few more minutes.
Sure.
Yeah, so it sounded like when you were younger, you needed external validation.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that was taught at a very young age,
Hmm.
because that started with my parents, right? Like needing their approval on everything. That my entire external world was set up that way.
Hmm.
And it was never taught to me, or I was never raised in a way where any internal validation, I was always taught to minimize that, especially being a woman and being a woman of color. You're
Mm-hmm.
taught to play small. You're taught to not have a voice, essentially. And so that internal validation had been turned off for so many years. And I was taught that it didn't matter, that my voice did not matter.
By your parents?
Oh yeah. Oh
Wow.
yeah. So
It's rough.
external validation was like that
Everything.
was it. That was
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was their approval, just making them happy was that was like the key to my life.
We're still
The
talking
key
about your
to being
parents
happy.
when you say them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. So it wasn't a good home environment, of course, but looking back now, but as a child, you don't know that you're learning those things, that you're being set up for those things. So yeah, as a young adult, that external validation piece was still very much there. I had to unlearn a lot of like, mindsets, and I had to unlearn a lot of habits. I had to unlearn a lot of what I thought was truth because it came from my parents, because you think your parents are right. They're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so unlearning a lot of that in my like mid to late 20s was very hard.
Can
And
you can you talk about what you had to unlearn?
oh gosh, yeah. First, foremost, had to unlearn that my voice didn't matter, that
Mm.
I could say, that I could talk and I
Mm.
could speak, and what I had to say was important. And then I had to unlearn asking for permission.
Mm.
That was big. I had to unlearn being afraid of my dad.
Mm.
Like that fear, it was so there. Like it was, you never did anything unless you asked dad first, right? And only if he said, then it could go. So I had to unlearn that. I had to unlearn a fear that I had as a child and that has come into my young adulthood. And I had to unlearn that because and this probably goes a little off topic, but I had to because I made a change in my life that went against everything that my parents have raised me to be. And in order for me to follow through with that choice, I had to unlearn the fear. I had to unlearn asking for permission. I had to unlearn that my family life was the most important piece of it. It was the most important thing in my life.
Mm.
I had to unlearn that. And that's really hard because your family should be your most important piece in life. But I had to realize that when mine was not good, it was not great, and it wasn't what I needed to grow in all aspects of life, I had to step away from that. I had to remove myself out of that. Now, obviously still, I talked to my parents. I still went over there. It was just, I made a boundary. I had to draw a boundary around myself and I stuck to it.
So it sounds like especially your dad, was really rough on you when you were a
He was very
child.
strict. Yeah, he was very strict. He was very much education, education, education. Um, he was just very, very strict with like rules, especially with girls. I was
Mm.
the only girl out of three boys. So
Oh man, so you have probably
yeah,
had it the hardest, I would
I
assume.
did. I
What was
did.
it
It was
like growing up with three brothers?
chaotic. Oh my gosh, so much fighting. Just so much. I can throw a mean punch because of them.
Well, it sounds like you have thick skin from that.
You have to to survive them.
I did a podcast with a young woman in her 20s a few weeks ago, and she also had, I think, three brothers as well.
Wow.
And we were talking about how when she was a kid, because she had three brothers and constantly, she felt like she didn't fit in. She felt like very like out of place, and she felt very out of control. And now that
Mhm.
she's an adult, she's still overcoming, the being controlling, because
Right.
she's trying to compensate for her lack of control back then. Can
Right.
you relate to that at all, or no?
Oh, a little bit, yeah,
Mhm, mhm,
actually.
mhm,
Because I grew up in kind of a very controlled environment,
mhm, mhm,
right? And I think the most beautiful thing I have found out about control is when you live a life where you are fully being the person that you were intended to be, you're at full bloom. You're aligned, everything is you're your identity is just everything that you need it to be,
Hmm.
that brings joy because you have less control. The more you release control, the happier you'll be as a person. And I
Interesting.
being raised in a very
Mm,
controlled environment, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to control everything.
mm.
And so I was very type A for a little while, just
Mhm.
to control every aspect, every outcome, and I realized the more I let it go, and granted, it didn't happen overnight. But letting one piece go at a time until you don't really have full control anymore in most of the things that you would want control in, but it brought so much peace and joy, and I wasn't expecting that piece of it. So if she can keep going, keep going.
Keep going as far as letting go of the need to
To
control.
control, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it really reminds me of the song "Let It Be" by the Beatles. When I find
Mhm.
myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Right?
Right.
I feel like in life there are only a pretty small percentage of things that we can control, right?
Right.
And some people would agree with that, some people would disagree. Everyone has their own philosophy on like
Sure.
on
Right.
control and like what there's a name for it, the external compass or something like that. I forget the name.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean this is something I also think about a lot, which is that we really, and it's tough, it's very tough, but we have to learn to let go of our of control, especially
Mhm.
when it comes to other people and other people liking us, other people respecting us, other people loving us. I mean, maybe to a certain extent, to a small extent, we can act a certain way and control that, but for the most part we can't control the way that people feel about us. And
Right.
over the years I've become very pro like letting go of control, and also like not forcing things. And it's and we were
Yes.
talking about this before, not forcing relationships, not forcing friendships. This is something that younger people really need to hear, because people are in their 20s and even 30s, can be very like, I need this person to like me, I need them to like me, so I'm gonna work really hard for this person to like me. And
Right.
now I'm 36, and I've become a lot more like, just let him go, you know what I mean?
Yes. It's one of those things. If it's meant to be, it'll be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I noticed that in your language, that you
Mhm.
you have this very like, if it's meant to be mentality.
It will happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then why force it? Like
Yes.
why hold on to something that isn't meant for you when
Yes.
you
J-
could be
j-
at
j-
peace?
Right, right. Just become the best version of yourself, and you will most likely attract what is meant
Exactly.
for you. You mentioned the phrase. It's funny because I hear the word external validation all the time. I never really hear the word internal validation, and you mentioned that, and I
Yeah.
wrote it down. So how did you reach the point of not really needing external validation as much and becoming more internally validating? How did you reach that point?
I think the biggest step you have to take is to trust yourself.
Mm.
I think the more that you learn to trust yourself,
Mhm.
the more that you learn, have the confidence to know that internally.
Mhm.
Like it's an intuition. You
Mhm.
just aren't listening to it. And the more that you start listening to it, the more that you trust your actions, you trust yourself to know what's good for you, then that internal validation piece just gets stronger and stronger. It's like a muscle, the more you work it, the stronger it gets.
Mhm.
And I think the key for that is one, to have trust in yourself, two, have confidence in yourself.
Mhm.
And you can build your own confidence internally by doing things that, might scare you, but little things. Don't,
Yeah.
jump in it all
Mhm.
big, but
Mhm.
little things, little small aligned actions. Do one thing where you were just scared or you didn't think you could
Yes.
do it,
Yeah.
like public speaking,
Mhm.
like do that and then see how that makes you feel. And the more you do things like that, the more you start to have confidence and build that confidence internally. And when you get to the point where you have so much trust in yourself and you have so much confidence in yourself and you have the knowing, the intuition, and like where things are aligned and the internal and the external matches, you have so much power at
Yeah.
that point. You have so much power because then nobody else can sway you with their ideas. You know, okay, I know I have this moral compass or I have this idea, and you learn to see what's right and what's wrong just from that. It's almost like a compass. It kind of gives you an internal compass, so to speak. But yeah, the people just don't have power, and your frequency, you vibrate differently. Like,
Hmm.
and that vibration is what attracts the right people to you. And that's what lets go. That's what the wrong people, like, they feel it too. And so
Yeah.
they fade away on their own.
They fade away. Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah.
They fall off one way or another. And thank you so much for mentioning stepping outside of your comfort zone. I think this is something that a lot of people need to hear. Once again, especially younger people. There's no possible way that you can grow if you don't step outside of your comfort zone. Public speaking
Exactly.
was a great example. Everyone said, not everyone, but most of my guests say the same thing, which is, I was really, really nervous at first, and I'm
Mhm.
so glad that I did it after. So, it's so important. Like, for example, like me starting my master's, I had to go
Mhm.
back to finish my bachelor's. There were many times in my life, starting this podcast where I had to step outside of my comfort zone. And it's really the only possible way to grow and to get what you want in life. You mentioned a word on your Instagram, and I should have wrote it down.
Oh,
Can I check really quick? Because
sure. Was it Viveka?
yeah, I think that was it. I think that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's an ancient Vedic term, but it's basically like separating milk from water.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And it's having the discernment to know, that not everything you do is right for you.
Mhm.
So it's knowing what is right for you because you're aligned, you'll see it. And then knowing what's not good for you and then not chasing it. Because I think
That's such an interesting concept, because I've never heard that word before.
Mhm.
Um, what what determines what is right for you? Like, do you when you say what's right for you, right? Are we talking
Yeah.
about like divine intervention? Are we talking about happiness? Like, what determines what is right for you?
I'm trying to think of a really good example that I could use, kind of almost like a metaphor. Um, or let me think if I have any personal experience that I can kind of share. Um, okay, I think I have one. So, okay, so kind of going back to my 20s, college, right? So, I went to school for pharmacy because that's what my parents wanted me to do. And I did it for 3 years. Um, two for the you're supposed to do 2 years undergrad. I took an extra year to
Mhm.
try to still figure out, is this what I want to do? And I got to the point where I was like, okay, this is good for me. It's good. I will have a good degree. I will be making money as soon as I graduate. This is a good thing. But I had the discernment to know even if I went through it, I would not be happy. I would be doing a job where I was not happy because it did not align with who I was. That is not what it wasn't what I wanted to do in life. So while I could have forced myself to do it, sure. Could I have, finished pharmacy school? Sure. I at that point though, I made that call because and I use that example because it is good for you to have a good degree, right? Like to be making money, to have a job ready to go. And it's a what my parents would call proper degree.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so
Six
it was all
figures.
good things, right?
Mhm.
But I had to make that discernment call for me and know that if I went through it, yes, all of these things are good, but I would not be happy. And so that's what I mean by you'll know when and I hate using that term, you'll know, but
Mhm.
it really does kind of just hit you like a stack of bricks,
Yeah,
like you'll feel it in your body. And I think like humans, we don't use our nervous system as much as we should. Like we
interesting.
don't like if you listen to your body, your gut will tell you instantly whether this is for you or not. And I think that goes back to the stillness we were talking about earlier is the more stillness that you have, the more you listen to your body. And it will tell you, it has all the answers. It'll tell you exactly what's good for you, what's not good for you, what is meant for you, what is not meant for you. You just have to be in stillness to listen to it. And then Viveka comes in because you can have that awareness.
I
But
see.
Viveka is the discernment to then know. okay, this is a good thing, but is it good for me?
Do you think that your gut is ever wrong?
That my gut has never been wrong, which is really scary.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so scary. Um, but I do have strong intuition, and I know everybody has intuition. I think you have to practice it. Like you have to listen to it more. The more you listen to it, the more you'll hear it. And I think a lot of people just don't. There's so much noise in our world. Literally, world today is just nothing but noise, and people don't stop to listen to themselves, to trust themselves.
Yeah,
So.
this is something I think about all the time because sometimes I really wonder, like, is my gut always right? Because sometimes I feel like it was wrong in the past.
Can I give you a
Yeah,
science background
yeah,
answer
yeah,
on that?
yeah.
Okay, so I always joke. I have this joke that I'm like, oh, well, don't listen to your brain because it'll try to logic you out of
Uh-huh.
things, right?
Uh-huh.
And don't listen to your heart because emotions can be blinding,
Exactly, exactly.
right? But listen to your gut. Your gut always knows. So your gut is like your second brain. It actually has power to turn your genetics on and off. Like that is your brain can't do that. And so when I say listen to your gut, it's because your gut is like almost a second nervous system of sorts. Like it is a second brain. And it knows things because it collects information and it knows things that it subconsciously have already processed and it's already taken care of that job for you. You just have to listen to it.
This is kind of reminded me of like a third eye concept.
Sort of, yes. Yes. A little bit. Third eye is only different because it's more it's not a lived in experience as much as it's truth.
Hmm.
Like the third eye is nothing but truth. It cuts through what we call Maya. Maya is like the veil that blinds us in this world. It's the
Hmm.
veil that hides truth from us, essentially. And the third eye cuts through that veil because it can see truth. It can see what is truth, right? And your gut is almost like a second discernment tool. Like it processes all the information that you have taken in all day, day after day, and it will literally tell you like, oh yeah, okay, all that information, all that data that I have, I'll tell you, okay, this is most likely the outcome, yes or no.
Oh man, I just had something to say. What was I gonna say? Uh, oh yeah, the question was, is there an Eastern term for gut? Is there like an Eastern term for that?
I mean, like the physical body part
Or like,
uh,
is there like an Eastern term for the concept of
of
always trusting your
listening, of
gut?
trusting your
Yeah,
gut.
yeah,
Uh, Not that I can think of off the top of my head.
I bet there is one that we don't
I
know
bet,
about.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up after our chat today. I have to know now.
Yeah, I bet there is one. But listen, thank you so much for
No
bringing Eastern
problem.
wisdom to the podcast because I am very very curious and interested in like Eastern wisdom. Western wisdom is everywhere, and you know they both bring something to the table. But I
Yeah.
really I'm becoming more and more biased towards like Eastern wisdom and Hinduism and you know Indian culture. So thank you so much for bringing that. Is there's
Absolutely.
anything else you wanted to add or ask before we wrap
Um,
it up?
no, I this was my first podcast, so thank you for having me.
Yes.
I hope I was okay.
No, you were great, and thank you for coming on. I'm gonna stop recording, but I'm gonna tell you what
Sure.
happened last week. Okay?
Okay, yeah,
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me stop
sure.
recording.